frozen berries of choice, and then we're gonna add in 1/3 cup of maple syrup.
Now we use a Vitamix blender. Anybody heard of Vitamix before? There's another brand called BlendTech. BlendTech is a little bit cheaper. I wouldn't say cheaper because these things are expensive. And then there's another brand that we've seen out there, Waring, W-A-R-I-N-G, and we've seen blenders of their commercial blender, and they run about maybe 100, 150 bucks. So Vitamix like top end, then BlendTech, and then there's a Waring. And I've seen another one, Extreme. Was that another one?
Yes.
Yeah. And you'd be surprised. My mom found one in Aldi's. She found a blender that was a commercial blender, and it was less than 100 bucks, and it did everything that this does.
Next, we're gonna add in a 1/2 cup of water and 2 tablespoons of arrowroot powder.
What is arrowroot powder, and what does that do?
It's a thickening agent that we use instead of cornstarch, because we try to stay away from the corn because it's a genetically modification of the corn. And arrowroot, I believe, comes from the arrowroot. Mm-hmm. They do, but it's hard to find. Mm-hmm.
Put that on the blender.
Mm-hmm. It's 1 tablespoon, but I have it doubled here.
Where do you find arrowroot at?
Arrowroot, locally in Summerville, Ingles carries it. It's in the baking section. Sometimes you can also find it if the store has a gluten-free section, it'll be with the gluten-free products. So if it doesn't blend all the way, you're gonna add a little bit more water just to get it to blend. I didn't double it. And then you're gonna pour it into your saucepan until it thickens.
Okay, it was extra hot.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys are going to have an opportunity to sample these things. We're going to put together a chia seed pudding with this sauce, and as well as, I think we're doing a hummus as well. So you guys be able to sample these things as well. Yes?
On medium or low? This is on medium, but I probably should have did low.
You want me to start at?
I need to rinse this one.
Okay.
Are the berries completely chopped up or a little bit?
There's a little bit of chunks in here, but you can do it to your preference. You can have it really smooth, blend it till it's really smooth, or you can leave it with partial chunks. Another way you can do it, you can put it straight into the pan, but you'll have to leave the arrowroot out with a little bit of water reserve. And once the berries are softened, you can mash it directly in the pot if you want it really chunky. And you don't have to, you can skip the blender step. And then you will stir in the arrowroot with a little bit of water right after it softens, and you get it to the berries to the consistency that you want it. Because it doesn't take long for the arrowroot to thicken. Maybe 3 to 5 minutes.
Let me stir that.
Yeah, look at that.
The blend in a second.
Next, we're going to move into a hummus recipe.
You got the ranch first. You gotta switch the hummus.
You did do.
Yeah.
Yes, hummus first.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. And we're going to start off with 1.5 cups of hummus.
Or chickpeas. Oh, not hummus. You said 1.5 cup of hummus.
1.5 cups of garbanzo beans.
Garbanzo chickpea. It's like.
Now you can use the can, and you want to make sure that just check the salt on it. If it doesn't use the sea salt, then get unsalted, and you just increase the salt by a 1/2 teaspoon. And you're going to use the liquid.
Thank you.
And then next, I'm going to add a cup of walnuts.
Front row seat there.
Next, we're going to add in 1 to 2 cloves of garlic. Usually I lean towards the more, only because of the health benefits of garlic. Any oppositions?
Who don't like garlic? Should get some peppermint leaves too afterwards, right? Yeah, berry sauce is starting to thicken up now.
Next, we're going to add in 1 teaspoon of Himalayan salt. So this is my youngest.
It's
This
Mr.
is
Matthew.
Matthew.
Matthew's our youngest. Usually be Tiffany. I mean, what's her name? Madison. One of these kids. Madison. We have 5 children. Oldest is 14. The youngest is 2 years old.
We're going to do 1 teaspoon of Himalayan salt.
So anybody know why we use Himalayan salt versus table salt? All right. Somebody's went through the program. Yeah, 82 minerals. Table salt has 2 minerals, sodium and chloride, very harsh minerals if it's not balanced with the other minerals. So we recommend Himalayan salt. And so in our restaurant, the salts we use to cook food is either the Celtic salt or the Himalayan salt. So we don't compromise on those things.
Next, we're gonna do 2 tablespoons of lemon juice.
And it's a lot cheaper to make your own hummus.
Mhm,
I think eating one of those little packages is like, what, $3 or $4?
mhm. And then next, just gonna blend it up until it's smooth. And you might have to add a little bit more liquid depending on, you don't want it too watery though. There we go.
You might have to do it on another thing. Yeah, we gotta. I think it's. Yeah, we can do that. Blend that in the back.
Yeah,
So next is the ranch dressing.
yeah.
We'll get that hummus
think- I
right for
think
you
it's
guys.
It's smoother.
Yeah.
Yeah. So next, we're gonna move into our ranch dressing, which is cashew based. And we're gonna start off with 3/4 cup of cashews. Now, if you have a cashew allergy, you can use sunflower seeds as well. It'll work well.
Cheaper with sunflower seeds too.
Well, I don't soak them, but
The
you
question. Let me
can
ask.
soak them.
The question was asked: do you soak them?
I don't soak because I have a high power blender, but it is easier if you don't have the high power blender to soak the cashews prior to using them, either overnight, or you can do a quick boil method, which is boiling it for 10 minutes and then draining the liquid off and then using it as is for the recipe. And next to that, I'm gonna do 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. And then 1 tablespoon of onion powder. One teaspoon of Himalayan salt. One teaspoon of dill. You can use fresh or dry. One-fourth cup of lemon juice. And 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. And 1 cup of water.
One cup water.
1
Yes.
cup of water.
It's not on the list, but yeah, 1 cup water.
I'm gonna, oops, let that off.
I think ranch is probably one of the most popular dressings that we serve at the restaurant.
And then you add that.
Let's see what's there.
And you want to blend it until it's smooth.
Yes, I do.
And there you have it. We have our ranch dressing. Now, it does look liquidy, but as it sits, it will thicken more. So
Especially in the fridge. So
that completes our
concludes-
demonstration. If you can see, the thickness of the chia has thickened up. And as it sits longer, the longer it sits, the thicker it gets. So if you're making it ahead of time and it's all dependent on your desired consistency of how you would like the chia seed pudding. You can add more milk to it later if you like. If you like it thicker, you can reduce the milk. It's up to you.
any
Any
questions?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take about a 5-minute break. We're gonna move our table, and next part of the program, we're gonna have our natural remedies class done by Barbara O'Neill. So we're gonna take this out. We're gonna have these samples ready for you guys, and when they're ready, we'll start serving you guys. So, all right. So we're gonna take a quick 5-minute break. Oh, sure.
You just want to move this whole.
Yeah, we're just gonna move the whole table. Hmm?
Hmm?
Let's see. Well, let me get.
You want me to just set this back there so it doesn't spill first?
Yeah, we can do that.
I'll take this.
Do.
I'm going to start immediately because the full effect of them won't be seen till the end of our meeting. And one of them is a castor oil compress. Castor oil penetrates deeper than any other oil. And wherever castor oil penetrates, it breaks up lumps, bumps, adhesions. Castor oil can break up a bone spur, not overnight. If the bone spur's been there 3 years, it might take 3 months. If it's been there 3 months, it might take 3 weeks. If it's been there 3 weeks, it might take 3 days. So be patient. In Galatians 6 verse 9, it says, "Let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we will reap if we faint not." So that's castor oil. I do not suggest you take it by mouth. What a relief. It can actually be quite irritating inside the gut, but on the outside, it is quite powerful. So when we apply the castor oil, we apply it as a compress. Now, the thicker the compress, the more castor oil can go into the compress, and then the more castor oil can go into your body. And we're going to be using an incontinence pad. I think you can buy them, you call it from the pharmacy. Now, I've cut it up. And what I've put inside, because it's not thick enough, I've put a couple of washers. Do you call them face cloths? Yeah? Now, if I was home, I'd just cut up an old towel, but I'm not. And these were only 40 cents, so we felt we could cut them up to the right size. We're going to make, now the beauty of this incontinence pad is that'll hold it, and it's got that plastic backing, which is not touching you. And this compress is not absorbing anything out of your body. It is just a vehicle to hold the castor oil to go onto your body. So we're going to make it quite secure, because this can be worn every day for maybe even a couple of months, and then you make another one. So I'm going to tape up the sides with masking tape. I just wanted to show you the layers in the middle. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to staple it in place, so it won't move around. So all the toweling won't go up into one corner. Now, I used to get a needle and thread and sew. I'd sew little corners. And I noticed at our health retreat, when on a rainy day or when we didn't have a lot of guests, I'd get the staff making the castor oil compresses. So they'd have a whole box of them made. And I noticed they weren't stitching. They used the staple. And I thought, what a great idea. So guess what? I use a staple now. So I'm just going to staple the four corners, and that just holds it in place. And I must say that is a lot easier than stitching. I think our staple is, something's wrong. See, when something goes wrong, we always look at why, don't we? Aha. And so we're doing a bit of extra work with this. We've got a stapler that's mucking up here. Because this compress is going to be lasting you a month or maybe two. Certainly mucking up this stapler. Yes, this stapler needs to go to the doctor. The staple doctor. Anyway, we've got a 2 at the bottom, and we can do a 2 a little bit later. And the reason I'm making it now is because castor oil is very, very thick, and it takes a long time to soak in. This is new, so it's quite possible. Yes, investigate why. Because I'm in a hurry, I'm just going to be a bit brutal, make a hole. And also, I'm going to put quite a bit on, so I'm not going to hold it up, because all that, it's very thick. It is just sitting on top like a little pool. And I'm only putting it in the front third, or the middle third, I should say, because as it soaks in, it'll spread out. So I'm making that now because that's going to take probably about 15 minutes to soak in. So you can't make this just before you use it. Well, you can it'll probably be ready in about half an hour. So I wanted to make that early Soon I'll be able to hold it up, and when we're finished, you can certainly come and have a look. Now, where would I put a castor oil compress that size? I might put it on the abdomen. Why would I put it on the abdomen? I would put it there to break up fibroids in the uterus. I would put it there to break up cysts on the ovaries. I would put it there if someone had constipation. I would put it there if someone had irritable bowel. It penetrates deep, deeper than any other oil. And remember Psalm 104 verse 14, where God says that he made herbs for the service of man. So they come in and do what your body needs. Might apply it to the back for kidney stones. Might apply it under the liver on the gallbladder area for gallstones. Yes, it can be over the liver because it'll help penetrate and help to revive a liver. Last night we looked at our liver lecture, so at the same time you also take the liver herbs and give the liver nutrition. So it can be part of the program. The human body will heal itself if you give it the right conditions. And these compresses, these poultices that we're looking at, can be part of those conditions. I might also apply it on a knee for a sore knee. Now, we're going to look at a lot of poultices tonight. You might try castor oil one night. You might try what we're going to look at another night. So you can alternate your poultices. That's something else you can do. It happened to me recently. When I lived in the rainforest, we were always driving through the creeks and we'd lose our brakes. So I learnt to drive with my gears. If I was coming to a corner, I'd just slow down with my gears because usually for about half an hour after we left the rainforest, I didn't have any brakes because we'd driven through the water. I just got used to using my gears. And when it was wet and we were going on those dirt roads, I quickly learned you can't accelerate, you can't brake, you got to just glide through the muddy roads. So again, I'd use my gears. I just got used to my 12 years we lived there, and old habits die hard, is that right? But I'm going to show you on Saturday morning how you can rewire your brain. That's good news, isn't it? I have to tell you that so you can explain what I'm about to tell you. So up in where we're living now, we got a new car, which was a manual. I haven't driven a manual for years. And so I went, and guess what I started doing straight away? The gear thing. I was just used to it. And we've got a lot of bends, a lot of corners and up and down. And it wasn't long before my left leg from the knee down was aching. It was hurting and I thought, oh, it's those gears. That leg hasn't had a workout like that for a while, even though I run up and down hills every day. And I'm pleasantly surprised that I'm actually not in pain after my workout the other night. Anyway, I thought it'll heal. Michael said, I'll give you the automatic. So I went over to the automatic to give that leg a break. 2 months later, it's still hurting. Now, if it's still hurting, you've got to investigate a little bit further. My son Peter, who's our builder, and our Tyler, he has done a remedial massage course. Did it years ago, did the top of the line, and he's an investigator. And he looked at my leg and he hurts because he thinks if you've got built up scar tissue, you just got to break it down physically. And he said, Mum, you've had an injury. And I said, you're right. 10 years ago, I was talking to someone as you're walking down steps, something you should never do, and I tripped. And the point of the step hit me right there. That hurt. I poulticed on for a couple of days and then it was okay and I never thought about it again. So can you see the threads that can come together to cause a certain condition? I'd use the gears a lot, my clutch foot, but it should have healed within. But it was still hurting. Aha, there was an injury there. He said, you've got built up scar tissue there. And I had never, ever felt it or known it. Now, going through his way of healing it was excruciating. He'd say, just breathe, Mum, Mum, just breathe while I kill you. Anyway, I decided to put castor oil on. And I made a castor oil compress and I bound it onto my my leg. And I had it on 24/7. I slept with it, I had it on through the day, I didn't really care what it looked like, I had a bandage on my leg. I wore it for 2 months, non-stop. And the pain is totally gone. In fact, I don't even know there's anything wrong there now. I used the same compress for that whole 2 months. I had a stretch bandage, I think you call it an ACE bandage, that I put on. I have to go through Peter's excruciatingly painful way of breaking down that scar tissue. The castor oil broke it down. So I love God's gentle surgery. I used to work in the operating theatre. That's not gentle, that's actually brutal. And I certainly understand it's got a place. Someone comes to me and says, what can my father do for his hip? You know, he's about to have a total hip operation. I said, have the total hip operation. At least he'll be able to walk again. Now, if he'd come to me 10 years earlier, maybe we could have done something there. Castor oil is very powerful, and yet it's very, very gentle. But the key is consistency. Notice what I did. I did it 24/7, which I could do. Now, there's a few other places you can use the castor oil, and that is on your eyes. It can break down cataracts. It can help with glaucoma. Now, it's not easy to put a drop of castor oil in your eye. So you know what's easier? Just put it on your finger and just wipe it over your eyelid and lashes. It'll go through the lashes. Remember, it penetrates, so it can penetrate through your eye. I have had several people testify that it has reduced their cataracts. So any eye problem, dry eyes, macular degeneration, and you know that it's a documented research now that margarine causes macular degeneration. Remember that alternative to butter that they introduced in the 80s? To reduce heart disease, has it? No, not at all. And yet cancer rates have come up, macular degeneration has come. So try the castor oil. One lady emailed me and she said, I looked it up on the internet and it said it's dangerous. Dangerous? Antibiotics are dangerous, but they don't tell you they are, do they? I had a lady email me today and she said that she's had a nasal drip, so she's been taking the doctor's nasal drops. She's gone through 4 bottles. Now her tongue is swollen, the inside of her mouth is swollen, even in her ears is hurting. Stop those drops and start oil pulling. Have you heard of oil pulling? You put a teaspoon of coconut oil in your mouth and you swish. And it's excellent healing up bleeding gums, healing up infected gums. It's called oil pulling because it pulls waste out of your tongue, pulls waste out of the glands under your tongue, out of the blood vessels under your tongue, but it also is an antibacterial. So it can help with the teeth. And by the way, with flossing, the only teeth you need to floss are the teeth you want to keep. Got that? So become a flosser, and oil pull will help. But let's hope that it helps that lady. So such simple things, very simple. And the number one cause of nasal drip is an allergy, either to chemicals or to mold or to peanuts, dairy, oats, refined sugar. And if someone stops all of those things, it can take a couple of months to see the full result. Now we're going to go to the onion. And if you've got a stuffy nose and you chop up an onion, what will happen? It'll crack, won't it? Now, the first things we're going to look at is cooked onion. And this is the first poultice I ever did. I was 25 years of age. I think I mentioned to you the other day when did we start? Sunday night. That my first daughter had 4 courses of antibiotics over 6 weeks. And then when my next child got an earache, I went to the old lady next door. She said, steam up an onion on the stove. I I steamed it up. Now you keep all that in place because that holds it together. And when it's soft, now you steam it or dry bake, because if you boil it, some of the healing properties can go into the water. And then you cut it in half. We're going to pretend that this is soft. It's been cooked. So when you cut it sideways, so you've got that at the bottom. So you're looking at the rings. And then you squeeze it, and little spoon, ideally, for processes of demonstration, we're using plastic. So you squeeze that soft onion and juice will come out. It'll be boiling, the spoon will be metal, so when it hits the spoon, it'll cool a little, and you can put that in the ear. And then you wrap this up, and you might wrap it up in a tea towel, you might wrap it up in a hand towel. I'm just going to wrap it up in a cloth. And you put the cloth over that cut side a few times. And you just get it to the temperature that it'll cool fairly quickly. And then you just place that straight on the ear. It's important to keep it hot. So you might put a piece of plastic over it. If you don't want to use plastic, you can put a piece of wool over it and then bandage it on. Or you might put a piece of wool and then a piece of plastic. Or you might put a woolly beanie on. Do you call it beanies? Those stretchy woolen hats you wear in the winter. You've got to keep it warm. If you can keep it warm, you can keep it on there for a few hours. If it gets cold, if the air gets to the wet onion, it will chill it. This brings great relief. You see, the onion is a drawer, and the heat of it also brings great relief to the aching ear. Now, a couple of things can happen, and it can be different in every case. Sometimes the eardrum will form a hole, and the pus will come out. That brings great relief. Now, if the eardrum forms a hole and the pus comes out, that eardrum will heal quickly as soon as it's over. You poke something into the eardrum, that's a different kettle of fish, and of course we're not going to do that. Sometimes accidents happen and that happens. But remember that if the body makes the hole to let the pus out, it will heal very nicely. One of the main causes of an earache, and I know with my children it was teething, but also an allergy to dairy products. Cow's milk's excellent milk for baby calves. That's about it. And also an allergy to the hybridized wheat of today. That can often cause a lot of mucus in the eustachian tubes. Our eustachian tubes are the tubes that join our ears and our mouth and our nose and our eyes. They should be nice and clear. You might apply the onion poultice once. That's all I did with my son. He fell asleep and I folded up a big towel and laid him on a towel lying on the onion, and I knew that would keep it warm. And he slept for 2 hours. What does that tell you? He's not in pain. And when he woke up, he was perfectly fine. In fact, that was it. So 6 weeks and 4 courses of antibiotics, and then 2 hours with an onion poultice on, I was impressed. And that really was the beginning of me discovering natural remedies, the result of which you're seeing today. Now, if the earache comes back the next day, just put another onion on. If it comes back that afternoon, put another onion on. Just keep putting the onion on. It won't be forever, and it will eventually stop. And that's all you really need to do. Yes? Can you use the onion if you're allergic to onion? Possibly not. Possibly not. Well, you can use potato if you steam up a potato and try that. Oh, well, don't use a potato. Sweet potato? Yeah, you see, sweet potato is not a potato, it's a yam. So necessity is the mother of invention. We're going to be looking at another one in a minute, and I'll mention that can be used for the ears. The other place that you can use a cooked onion is a boil. I had a man ring me and he said, I get boils inside my nose. Now you can imagine how painful that is. I said, ooh, I suggest a cooked onion, but inside the nose, whoa. Anyway, I left it with him and he rang me about 3 days later. He said, I woke up the next morning, I was in so much pain, half of my face was swollen up. I steamed up an onion, I got it to the right temperature, I put it on, covered it and I bandaged it. He said, I just left it there. It felt so good just being there. He said, I left it there for about 4 hours. Because it brought me pain relief, he said, I fell asleep. When I woke up, I took it off and everything came out. He said, I have never had the boil heal so quickly. And of course, if you've ever had a boil, once everything comes out, then you've got relief. Most pain is due to pressure. So when all that comes away, it's like the earache. When the ear lets the pus out, then there's a relief because the pressure's gone. So if you use it on a boil, ideally you leave it there even overnight, even 24 hours, leave it there as long as possible. So they're the two places to use a cooked onion. Now we're going to have a look at raw onion. And I'm going to show you what you can do for a sore throat. Now with this COVID thing that's happening at the moment, I guess everyone realises it's a strain of flu, and so it can be treated like a flu. And with some people, they get sore throats, and this is an effective way to help ease a sore throat. So you cut the onion into fine slices, and you get a cloth. In fact, I was giving this same lecture last week and I had the big old sheet and it was great. We just tore up the sheet and I've torn up an old, we call it t-shirt. Do you call it t-shirt? Undershirt? Something like that. We call it singlets too. So there's the onion finely sliced and you lay it on the cloth like so. And then you bring the cloth over and then over the other side. So you've got it like this, and then you put it on the neck like that, and then you can put plastic or a woolly scarf's good, and the woolly scarf will go round and round a few times. One might like your perfume today, and you can sleep with that overnight, but that will bring relief to a sore throat. As we go through some other things today, there are a few other things you can do for a sore throat, but that's part of the program. Leave it on as long as you want. With onion in the cooked and the raw, you discard it as soon as you've used it. Now I'm going to show you what you can do for a cough. And I gave this recipe to a lady day before yesterday. A 15-month-old is coughing all night. And I said, put the onion on the bottom of his feet. So what you do is you cut up an onion and put it into a plastic bag. At Misty Mountain, we buy boxes of plastic bags made out of starch. They're the best. So this will be the size for like the little Matthew you saw, a little 2-year-old. You put the onion in the bag. It's actually easier to get not a snap lock, just a soft bag. And the foot goes in the bag. So the chopped onion is touching the bottom of the feet. And then with most plastic bags, you can twist the top and then put a sock on and put the child to bed or the adult to bed or whoever it is. And you will be amazed. There'll be no cough for the whole night when they go to sleep with the chopped onion on the bottom of their feet. That onion will not hurt the skin at all.
Just one foot or both feet?
Both. Both feet. So this lady just emailed me. I got her email this afternoon. She said, I can't believe it. He slept all night. He's been coughing half the night. A friend of mine was camping down by the beach in Australia. a few campers there with tents, and there was a lady in one tent and she coughed all night. So my friend went up to her next afternoon and said, you've got a bit of cough. She said, I'm so sorry, I'm probably keeping everyone awake, I don't know what to do. My friend said, can I try something? She was camping, everyone's got onions when they camp, they got plastic bags, so she did it. She got 2 plastic bags, she chopped up an onion into half in each, told her what to do, put it on her feet, put the sock on, no coughing for the whole night. So that's a very simple one and yet a very effective one. And because onion is such a drawer, you definitely discard the onion the next day. It is such a drawer that if you've got a new fridge or you've just painted a room and it's a bit smelly, chop up an onion and put it on a plate and it'll absorb the bad fumes. About 6 months ago, I got a new fridge and I didn't like the smell of it. That plastic in use smell. So my new fridge had plates of chopped onion all the way through it. And so did the freezer before I put any food in it. And I only did it for 24 hours and then the smell was good. So we're going to chop this up. All you need is a jar and some honey. And you put a layer of onion in the jar. Usually about 1/2 inch, and then you drizzle honey onto it. Usually about a teaspoon. This is quite runny honey. And then another layer of onion. And you keep doing that till your jar's full. I'm making this now because by the end of our night, you will see the syrup form. And see this is thick, this honey, as honey is, but the syrup will be quite runny. And you'll see a difference there. The sky's the limit as to what you can do with this. You can add chopped ginger, you can add chopped garlic. The original recipe that I first read had sugar, and I didn't use sugar. I didn't give my children sugar. So I thought, I'm going to try it with honey, and it's very nice with honey. Now, up in the rainforest, when my children were little, we would get honey by the bucketful. And in the winter, it went solid. I think they call it candied honey. And I've done it with candy honey. I just put a big lump of honey and the same thing, it forms a very nice syrup. We call it the onion syrup. So if you need to use it, if you need it quickly because you've got a child that's coughing and in distress, you can often get a syrup formed within about half an hour. But ideally, you let it sit for 24 and then you strain the onion out. And that onion syrup, that will keep for years, really. It's like honey, it doesn't go off. So you just keep doing it until you've used up all your onion. I think this will be my last layer. My jar's just about full. Being the last layer, we might put about 3 teaspoons in this one. We'll bring it Thursday night and you can all have a taste. So there's my jar, and you can see when I hold it up, there's no syrup. It's just the thick, gooey honey. But by the end of the night, when I hold it up, you'll see the runny syrup. I see that's soaked in quite good now. And you see it's not taking up the whole area, because when you put that on the body, the oil will thin and it'll disperse a little bit more, because you do not want castor oil dripping everywhere. You might find about every second time you apply it, it's getting dry, then you put a little bit more and you'll get to know. Where does castor oil come from? It comes from the castor oil plant. When I was in Jamaica, I know that they have a dark brown castor oil. And so when I was in Jamaica, they said, "Is there anything you'd like?" And I said, "Yes, castor oil." So I took home 2 litres of brown castor oil. I think the health centres used it all, but I've still got mine at home.
The dark castor oil can be used also.
The dark castor oil is actually a bit more potent. Apparently, they boil it up a little bit and that releases more of the actives. Now we're going to have a look at garlic. This is a very large clove of garlic. And I'm going to write down a recipe for the flu bomb. It's the flu bomb. At the moment, we could all also call it the COVID bomb. So it's garlic and it's crushed. That's the #1 ingredient. Now, I'm not putting down how much, because some people can handle a little clove, some people can handle a big clove, and some people can handle 2 cloves. It's whatever you can handle. The next ingredient is ginger. And this is very finely grated or finely chopped, and it's about 1/4 teaspoon. The next 2 ingredients are eucalyptus oil. Now it says on the eucalyptus oil bottle, "Do not consume." Have you noticed? But you only want 1 drop. I'm not asking you to drink half a bottle, otherwise you'll go into a coma. Do you know what amazed me? In 1976, a little boy drank half a bottle of eucalyptus oil and went into a coma, and they banned eucalyptus oil. There was such an uproar about it. I mean, how many young men have died of alcohol poison after drinking a bottle of scotch, and they haven't banned that yet? It's crazy. So it will say unfit for human consumption only if you drink half a bottle, 1 drop. And it's an old remedy that's been used for centuries. An old lady told me that when anyone in her family got a cold, everyone had to line up for a little teaspoon with half a teaspoon of sugar in it and a drop of eucalyptus oil, and they all had to have a mouthful. If you don't have eucalyptus oil, you can use tea tree. The next ingredient to the recipe is cayenne pepper, and I'm not going to put how much, because some people can handle a sprinkle, some people can handle half a teaspoon. It's whatever you can handle. Juice of a lemon and 1 teaspoon of honey. And to that, you add about half a cup of hot water, and you drink it. Now, if you have any respiratory problems and you have that 3 times a day, it will ease your symptoms, and often within 3 days you've recovered. That's good to know, isn't it? I don't know if you realise that Russia has with some information that COVID causes clotting in the blood, and that's why it's happening in the lungs. So everyone just needs to have an aspirin. Well, you don't need an aspirin, you just need this cayenne pepper. It's the best blood thinner there is. So if that information filters through to you, the social media, I don't think it'll come through on main media. Remember the cayenne pepper, yes?
You make that up and drink the whole thing?
Yeah, you might be surprised to hear me say this, but you drink it.
And can you make it up ahead for the
You can.
Okay.
You can. We had a very industrious staff member who made up a whole jug of it and put it into ice cube trays, and then tip them into a bag. So if any of our guests get a cold, they can just take an ice cube, pour boiling water on, and they've got an instant flu bomb. And we also did it when our lemon tree was full of lemons. So 6 months later, we still had frozen flu bombs in our freezer. But you certainly can make it up ahead of time. But you can't give that to a baby. But what you can do to a baby is finely slice the garlic and wrap it on the bottom of their feet. What you will need is a little cloth like this, just a long cloth. And you put the fine slices like this on the cloth. Can you see how fine they are? Put the cloth over and then wrap that on the bottom of the baby's feet. Don't let the garlic touch the baby's feet or it'll form a blister. So make sure there's the cloth between the slices of garlic and the baby's feet. It takes 1 minute for 1 drop of blood to go around your whole body. And in a couple of minutes you can smell the garlic on the baby's breath. You don't often smell garlic on babies' breaths, do you? I remember I'd given a natural remedies class to a church I was going to about 20 years ago, and I told them about this. Sabbath, Our Lady wheeled her baby into church and the garlic smell. It's only a little church. Everyone knew that baby had garlic on its feet. The little baby had a cold. So that's garlic on the bottom of the feet. You could leave it on overnight. You can give it to a little toddler. I used to do it to my 3-year-old son, James, who used to get a lot of chest complaints. So he'd run around all day with the garlic wrapped on the bottom of his feet. And at the end of the day, when I took his shoes and socks off, the garlic was like a thin bit of yellow leather, dried out. There was nothing left. It had all gone into the body. The biggest pores on the whole of your body are on the soles of your feet. So it's a great way to get medicine in, is on the bottom of the feet. Next one we're going to look at is the ginger. And ginger is an anti-inflammatory. And ginger is probably best known for its anti-nausea properties. If you buy seasickness tablets or car sickness tablets from the health food shop, it's just compressed ginger. And the best way to make a ginger tea is to grate it and then pour boiling water on it. And you see this fine grater, that's the best way to make it. So I just grate it up on the grater. And I know if ever I've had a massage in Asia, they always give you a cup of ginger tea when you're finished. I don't know, well, no one can go there now, but years ago, when we went to Bali for a holiday, they would offer you a cup of ginger tea. Ginger tea can also warm you from the inside. If someone's been caught in the cold and they're shaking with cold, you give them a cup of ginger tea and it will warm them up. Also put their feet in a bucket of hot water too. That'll warm their whole body. The only time you wouldn't put them in a bucket of hot water is if they had no feeling in their feet. So I think I've got just about enough. Now to make this ginger poultice, I've folded over cling wrap a few times to make it a bit more usable. And I put that down and then I put the cloth down. And most of the cloths that I cut up for poultices are about this size. So what would that be? 10 inches square. And then you lay it down, and this has sorry, I haven't used this before. There we go. Now, where would you use a ginger poultice? You use the ginger poultice on joints. So remember, ginger is for joints. Why would you put it on a joint? Well, ginger has the ability to pull inflammation out of the joint. Now, let's say someone has an arthritic wrist and it's very painful. So that's about how much you'd use. And then you put the cloth over one side. You're going to make a little package. And then you put the cloth over the other side. I say north and south and east and west. And then you put it over like that. So you've got a little cap package, and that's very convenient. But can you see the juice coming out? And it's the juice that's going to go through the skin. It just means you haven't got grated ginger all through the bed or dripping everywhere. And then you put it on the plastic. So the side that's got one layer is this one you put on the skin. And then the plastic is around about a half an inch. So say it's my wrist here that's aching. So I will put that on the area, and then I'll bandage it on with an ACE bandage. Now what happens is, if there is inflammation in that joint, within half an hour, the skin feels very, very hot. Some people have said to me, my skin is burning. And I said, the good news is it will not burn you. And if you just can't handle, you can certainly take it off. It still would have done something. But a lot of people with arthritis, gout's another very good one, inflammation of the joint, they say, oh, it feels very nice. It's very nice. And what I find is that after half an hour, it'll get very hot, and then it'll ease a little. And then it might come a little hot again, and then it'll ease again. So if we're going to put this on someone overnight, we will put it on about 6 o'clock so that they can gauge what it feels like. And if they're comfortable with it, they can sleep with it. But if you put it on just before they go to bed and it gets really hot, it can wake them. So last week at Living Springs Retreat, we had a man there who had knee problems. He'd been an athlete, and often, he was 66, and often athletes come to our retreat in their 60s and 70s with many aches and pains. Because when you're young, you're invincible, yeah? So we put a ginger poultice on his knee at about 7 o'clock at night, and we bandaged it on with an ACE bandage. And I did something that I always do to poultices. I put my hand on it and I pray. I say, do you mind if I pray? And I've never said anyone says, yes, I do mind. I don't mind. And I just ask God to bless that poultice. Anyway, within half an hour, he said, oh, the skin's getting hot. That's an indication of the inflammation being pulled out of the joint. And I said, can you handle it? He said, I certainly can. It feels good. So he stayed with it all night, and he told me the next day that his pain had reduced by 3/4. You see, it's pulled the inflammation out of the joint. Now, I had one lady email me, this is a couple of years ago. She said, I tried the ginger poultice because I heard it on YouTube on the poultice lecture. She said, I put it on my knee, and she said, I couldn't believe the pain relief that I experienced. So she said, what I did was I put another one on overnight, and then I put another one on the next morning, and by mid-afternoon, she said the skin was burning like it was very sore. So she took it off, and all her skin was red and blistered. She said, what have I done? And I laughed. I said, you've just overdone it. You've pulled too much inflammation out of the joint, and now your skin's starting to protest. She said, what can I do? I said, well, you're not going to be able to do a ginger poultice for a few days. Maybe put a castor oil on, and that's very soothing. So if you do have an inflamed back, an inflamed joint anywhere, wrist, ankle, toes, fingers, just do it for a part of every day. Don't do it non-stop. Whereas the castor oil, you could do that non-stop. Yes, it can be used on a TMJ joint, yeah. Can you see you try it?
Yeah.
And you might alternate ginger one night and then the castor oil for 3 nights and then the ginger one night. So you can alternate it like that. I use mine castor oil non-stop because it was scar tissue that I had to break up. So ginger can be used on a sore lower back. It can be used on any joint. So just remember, ginger is for joint. And of course, being a vegetable matter, that needs to be discarded as soon as you've used it, in comparison to the castor oil where it just can be used indefinitely. You can even make it up early and just fold it up and use it. Obviously, I wouldn't keep that for any more than 24 hours, but it can be made a little earlier. The next thing we're going to look at is potato. And guess what I forgot? Potato. But I demonstrated how to make the ginger, and it's really the same. But make sure you don't put too much in. There's nothing worse than dripping potato poultices. Stains the sheets and the clothes. Where would you use potato for tissue inflammation? Now, this is your sprained ankle. This is your ingrown toe. This is your conjunctivitis. You'd never put ginger on an eye, but potato is very cooling and it's very soothing. So ginger for joint inflammation, potato for tissue inflammation. Yes? Pardon? You could use sweet potato, you could try it. I've even had someone use carrot.
But you talk about the regular food.
It's mostly your white potato. That's what we mostly use. But necessity is the mother in invention. You just use whatever you've got. But I drew my son had a splinter in his foot. He was 10 years old. So, sorry, I'm not a very good drawer. This is a foot, in case you don't know. Yeah, there's the ankle. Okay, foot. Looks a bit like a foot. Anyway, something was wrong, and I'd seen the hole at the bottom of his foot, but I didn't know what was in there. He'd stubbed his foot on an old sleeper. Railway tracks, those wood, we call them sleepers, and some people use them to landscape round swimming pool, and that's where we'd been. Anyway, it was inflamed and sore, so I put a grated potato poultice on it. It was still sore, so I put one on every night, but he was, it wasn't inflamed, he's just limping everywhere. And after 2 weeks, I'm still doing the grated potato poultice on him. So I also started to do hot and colds. What I did was I put his foot in a bucket of hot water, and I did this for 3 minutes. See, after 3 minutes, the stimulating sensation of hot water calms down. So then I did cold water with ice for 30 seconds. And I think we all know that the stimulating effect of cold water lasts for 30 seconds and then you get a dulling. So can you see what you're doing when you're alternating? You're using the stimulating effect of hot water, cold water, and you do that 3 times. Only takes about 15 minutes. It's one of the probably simplest hydrotherapy treatments you can do, but it is a very powerful treatment because the stimulation of the hot, then the cold, then the hot, cold again, it's stimulating blood to the area. And when you stimulate blood to an area, you're getting more oxygen, more water, more nutrition, more white blood cells, and the old stagnant blood is being taken away. So I did hot and cold 3 times, morning and night, and a grated potato overnight. He's limping all day. You know what these are like, I just go on regardless. Because it wasn't inflamed. Wasn't inflamed at all. And then a friend visited and I said, I don't know what's the matter with William. He's limping everywhere. So he pushed the bottom of William's foot and William nearly hit the roof, and my friend said, there's a lump of wood in there. He said, I can feel it. He said, he'll need surgery to get that out. And William looked at me very worried, and I said, it's all right, mate, we'll do greater potato surgery. So what I did now was I did it non-stop. Greater potato overnight, hot and colds, greater potato all morning, changed it at lunchtime, another greater potato and colds, greater potato overnight. Now his foot looked like an old prune, but I wanted that thing out. After 2.5 days, a black thing appeared in the hole, and it was really about that big. So we got a needle and flicked the edge and then put a needle into it and start to pull it out. It just started to come out. And I stopped. We called the family because we've been watching Will limping for weeks. William's the youngest of 6 children. And I said, you do it, Will. And he just pulled it out. And it was the thickness of 2 matchsticks and 1 inch long. No wonder he's limping. But you see what the hot and colds and the greater potato did? That pulled it right out. And that foot was as clean as a whistle. Now, what would have happened if I'd done nothing? It would have blown up like a balloon, red line up there. And I was talking to a doctor one day, and he had a mother bring a child in that had a bamboo big splinter in the back of the foot. He said, we did surgery, but we didn't find it because they can't go cut. So he told me that he sent the mother home and told the mother to do hot and colds. He was a Chinese doctor, so he had a little bit of knowledge about natural treatments. So it's so simple. Now with these hot and cold, you can use it on hands, you can use it on feet. The only time you wouldn't is if someone had no feeling. Because if you put someone's hand that's got no feeling or foot into that wood, you can damage the tissues. When I was in Papua New Guinea, I was up in the highlands and in the interior. My host took me up there and we went to an area where there was no running water, no electricity. And I could not talk to the people. I didn't know their language, but I had an interpreter. And a man came up and he had his hand bandaged. And I said, what happened to his hand? It was a hunting accident and a knife went almost through his hand. His hand was swollen up and he was in a lot of pain. Now, there's no doctors, there's no nurses, there's nothing up there. And there's no electricity and there's no fridges. So I quickly looked around and they had like a kitchen out the back where they had just a fire where they were cooking. They had a kettle and I said, bring me 2 bowls like this, one with hot water, one with cold water. And there was a pipe there coming out of the ground that was like the spring. And when I first put his hand in, he could not bear it. So you put a bit of cold in until the person can bear it. He was looking at me frowning. Everyone was looking at me frowning. And when he could handle it, I left it there 3 minutes. And then I took it out and put it into the cold. It was straight out of the ground, so it was fairly cool. And I kept it there for 30 seconds. And then I put a bit of boiling water into the hot to bring it up a bit. I got him to feel it with his good hand, right, okay. And then he put it back in. By the end of the second hot, I don't know what he was saying, but a big smile came to his face and he's chattering, and they're all talking. What did that tell me? He's got relief. See, when you've got an injury, the blood tends to sit and pool in that area. So I got them to throw out that cold water and get fresh cold water out of the spring. So every time it was as cold as I could make it. So we did it 3 times. So hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold. And by the end of it, you could see the swelling had gone down by about half. And he's smiling and chattering away. I think it's the first pain relief that he'd had for about 24 hours. And then I said, does anyone know of green leaves that could heal in the bush? And someone did. So they brought some green leaves and I squished them with my hand like this and put it on on the area. I said, does anyone have a bandage? Well, someone ran up and got a bandage and we bandaged it on. And for the rest of the day, this man just followed me and he's jabbering away to everyone. What does he do now? Whatever works. Is that right? If it starts to hurt in a couple of hours, he knows what to do. Can you see? He can do that every 2 hours. I just taught them, is that right? There's no need for me to say anything. Anyway, I can't because I don't know the language. I think that if I hadn't gone there that day, and they don't have money, he could not even get to town, it's quite hypoglycemia would set in. It's quite possible that he could have got blood poisoning. Simple things. Now this hot and colds, you can get 2 large tubs and you can sit in hot water for 3 minutes and you can sit in cold. Why would you do that? You do it for hemorrhoids. You would do it for a bladder infection. You would do it for incontinence. You would do it for any problem in the reproductive area, man or woman, or the kidney area, or even constipation or irritable bowel. What it does is it draws fresh blood to the area. It drives the old blood out. I have to hold myself back because I could tell 100 stories on the power of that simple hydrotherapy. But back to William and his foot. He had a big hole there now. What did I do? Nothing. Nothing. I did nothing. It was as clean as a whistle because of the greater potato. Now, if William had told me it was getting sore, I'd put another greater potato on it. Now, I did encourage him not to run in the dirt. I did encourage him to wear some shoes and socks until the hole had healed. To this day, he has a little scar. He's 35 now, something like that. And he's got a scar there and ever will, testifying to how big that was in his foot. That's just a simple greater potato. Gets the tissue inflammation down, and the hot and colds and the greater potato just gave the body everything it needed to eliminate that foreign matter. And the body does try to eliminate anything that's foreign, but you just need to help it. We've also helped many treading on rusty nails by doing that. You see, tetanus can only get a hold on the body if the wound is deep. There's an element of horse organisms because horses carry tetanus, and the wound has healed from the outside but hasn't healed on the inside. So just keep it open, because the tetanus vaccine is a very nasty one. People can get very sick from having that. But I've treated many rusty nails by just doing hot and colds and greater potato, sometimes just greater potato. Just keep putting it on. Now, you know, once the inside's healed, you can put 100 greater potato poultices on and it won't open it up. But it will keep it open until it's healed from the inside out. The next thing we're going to look at is cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper is a blood stimulant. Cayenne pepper moves blood to the area. And Leviticus 17:11 states that the life of the flesh is in the blood. Why is it the life of the flesh? Because it carries oxygen and nutrients and white blood cells and water. And new blood into an area brings everything that body needs to heal and drives the old blood out. And that's how the hydrotherapy works. Now, if someone's got cold feet, you can't put their feet into hot water. Someone's got no feeling in their feet, but you can apply a cayenne pepper compress on the bottom of the feet. So how we make that is, again, I've doubled over the cling rack a couple of times, and I've got a double layer of kitchen paper, and I put it on top of that. And then I'm going to put a light sprinkle of olive oil. And what the olive oil does is it causes the cayenne pepper to stick to it. So we spread that out. Because if you just put cayenne pepper onto there, it'll just fall off. And you put about half a teaspoon per foot. It will never burn the foot. There's a book called Back to Eden by Jethro Kloss. He devotes half a page to every herb, but he devotes 10 pages to cayenne pepper. And the foot goes straight on that. And there are a couple of doctors that are quoted in Jethro Kloss's section on cayenne pepper. One doctor said, you can never overdo cayenne pepper. Another doctor said, it will never cause a lesion or a blister. So the foot goes straight on there, and then you put a sock on, and the person wears it overnight. Now, if I put these on my feet tonight, I don't have cold feet. If I put them on my feet tonight, by 4 o'clock in the morning, I'd be waking up and ripping them off because my feet would be so hot. Now, that sounds like heaven to people who have cold feet. Yes?
What's the name of the book or the name of the author?
Back to Eden, and the book, that's the name of the book, and the author is Jethro Kloss, Kloss. Was written, I think, in about the mid-late 1800s. It's often called the Herbal Bible. Now you can, and I've done this, you can make it up for early and you can fold that over and put it in maybe a snap-lock bag. I made it up for an elderly lady once so that she had a store for the next week. One man put this on his feet. He's had no feeling in his feet for years. He said, I feel like there are 2 lumps of stone hanging on the end of my legs every night when I sleep. So we put cayenne pepper compresses on the bottom of his feet, and he woke up the next morning. He said, I didn't have that feeling. We let his feet have a break the next night, and then the next night we put it on again, and he said in the morning, I feel pins and needles in my feet. See, that's the first sign of life, isn't it? So I wrote an article in a health magazine, and I labelled it Feet Come Back to Life with the cayenne pepper. It's a stimulant, and the blood's the life of the flesh. When you stimulate blood into an area, you're stimulating life into the area. So that's your cayenne compress, then you put it on the feet. You can also make a compress like that and put it on the thyroid for an underactive thyroid. That'll wake anything up. If someone's got an overactive thyroid, they don't put that on it, they put ice on their thyroid. How simple is that? Yes? Can you use this with someone with neuropathy? It is often a side effect of chemotherapy, or someone with neuropathy from diabetes. Absolutely. It is perfectly safe. It's very safe. The only side effect is they'll get warm feet, or that you will damage their tissues. You could do warm and cool, maybe after a few days of warm and cool and cayenne pepper compresses, you might be able to get to that point, but you'd have to go cautiously. Cayenne pepper can be taken internally. Cayenne pepper thins the blood. Best blood thinner that there is. Research is now showing that aspirin causes brain bleeds, eye bleeds, and stomach bleeds. It's one of the biggest causes of stomach ulcer. So if you are on aspirin, you can safely stop with great benefit to your health and start taking the cayenne pepper, and it'll heal the brain bleed and the stomach bleed and the eye bleed. Because internally, if there's any bleeding, it'll seal it. And externally, we've used it several times on cuts. I was at my daughter's place 2 weeks ago, and her 10-year-old son has a new knife, and he's got a little leather shield there, and lessons they must learn. Is that right? Well, we're glad he didn't lose the finger, but it went right into his, it was about half an inch long, and he came in and he had a Band-Aid on and blood's going everywhere, and his mate was there so he couldn't cry. So I had a look at it, and I could see the globules of fat, so I knew that it was worthy of a stitch, but no one else saw it, so I said, we'll put some cayenne pepper on it. And so he said, sure, Nana. He's had that before. So we sprinkled the cayenne pepper in. You know, it's already hurting and it doesn't really hurt much. Now, you have to wait maybe a couple of minutes for it to clot, and it will. It'll seal that blood. And he just kept mopping around it. And when it had stopped bleeding, which took about 2 minutes, then we put 2 Band-Aids on. And off to play. And that night when he had a shower, it came off, and he came and showed me it was sealed beautifully. Now, do you remember what I said? I saw the flat globules, and anyone else who would have seen it would have said it's got to be stitched. Can you imagine going to hospital, waiting there? The lignocaine that they put in is incredibly painful. Let's just put cayenne pepper on it. Now, the next day, he was so proud of his cut. You know, boys love their injuries. Hard for us women to understand, but they do. I've had 3 boys. And I said to him, I want you to wear a Band-Aid because he's going outside and he's going to be climbing. And if he knocks that, it will open again. And if he knocks it and it opens again, you just put the cayenne pepper on again. So it's very powerful. It'll constrict. But inside, when you take it, say 1/4 teaspoon 3 times a day as a blood thinner, it opens the blood vessels. Isn't that incredible? That's a beautiful illustration of Psalm 104 verse 14, that God gave herbs for the service of man. So the cayenne pepper comes in and says, where would you like me? Or you want me to constrict those blood vessels because you're bleeding. Or you want me to dilate it over here to get a better blood flow through the body. Isn't that incredible? Medicine calls it synergism, working with the needs of the body. It'll thin the blood, it'll open the blood vessels, and it'll strengthen the arterial walls. So it's an excellent herb for heart. Now on Thursday night, we're going to look at diabetes and heart health, and I'll be also talking about this again. I'll be probably repeating what I have just repeated about what it can do. Yeah, put it in a little water and drink it down. Isn't it hot? Yeah, it'll tingle for a minute, but not for long. Start with 1/4 teaspoon. And did you hear what she said? How many teaspoons?
You can just eat it on food too.
Yeah.
Is there any top limit?
Is there any top limit? Not that I know of. But if you take that much, well, this doctor said it's impossible to abuse it, but our palate will tell us. It tells it to ease off. It'll heal a stomach ulcer. And it's very, very, very good with a cold. If you've got a sore throat and you take 1/4 teaspoon, it'll really tingle for a few minutes, but then you won't have a sore throat. So you take your cayenne pepper, or maybe even better, take your flu bomb, put the onion compress around your throat, put some onion on the bottom of your feet. Ladies, your husband mightn't want to sleep with you that night. Oh, yeah, both of you, right? But they're very simple, and you have nothing to lose. Nothing to lose. But let's have a look at our onion syrup. Can you see that? Can you see the liquid now? That's our onion syrup, but we're going to let that sit 24 hours before we use it. So the last thing we're going to look at is charcoal. When you make a charcoal poultice, this is the recipe. It's 1 part psyllium. You see, when you mix charcoal with water, it's like mixing dirt with water. 5 part. No, I think it's 3. 3 part charcoal. Yep, that's it. And then 7 part water. And what you do is you mix it up in a little bag like this, then there is no mess. And I'm all for no mess. So what we're doing is 1 part psyllium, that's the psyllium. Now what you can use is, you can use ground flaxseed or you can use slippery elm, but psyllium's probably the cheapest. And you're very careful that you never drop this. So we've got 3 part charcoal, 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to seal that up and get that mixing quite well. So mix those well together. And I'm going to show you why this is the best way to do it. So now we want 7 teaspoons of water. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you move it around and around until it starts to go jelly. And because of the psyllium, it will go jelly. And then you stretch it out so it fills the bag. And you can get a rolling pin and roll it up really smooth so it's quite thin then. And the reason why this is such a great way to do it is that you'll then have a thin sheet of like jellied charcoal, and you keep it in your fridge or you can keep it in your freezer. And then if someone has a bee sting or an ant bite or a wasp bite or a snake bite, you can cut a section, peel the top off and just put it straight on. And then it will have that plastic top. If you look at charcoal under a microscope, you will see it has lots of little facets, like a huge amount of surface area, and those little facets adsorb poisons, not absorb, add. Now, absorb is what happens when you put a sponge in water, isn't that right? But adsorb is when it pulls the poison in and neutralizes it. Nothing else will do that. So NASA, they use charcoal to filter the water in outer space. NASA used charcoal to filter the air in outer space. In dialysis, they use charcoal to filter the blood before they put it into the person. And in many masks, gas masks, it's charcoal that's in the filter because charcoal adsorbs poisons. And in hospitals today, they're giving charcoal if someone has had an overdose, because it will adsorb, which means it draws the poison in and neutralizes it. Cannot hurt you now. So it can be used for all cases of poisoning. It can be used for diarrhea. It can be used for vomiting. Now that's going nice and jelly now. I'm just careful not to put it on that white sheet. So now we push it out. I'll let a little bit of air out of this bag. Every home should have a few packets of these. You can even put it in the freezer if you don't think you might use it. We have health food shops in Australia. I guess your equivalent of a health food shop would be something like Trader Joe's. Yeah, they have health. No?
We have Judy's in Summerville.
Now there's a health retreat called Wildwood, and I know they sell it, so you could Google Wildwood. Now, can you see how thin that is?
They have that back.
That is the best I know. If every fridge or freezer has that, then you got a bee sting or a snake bite or spider bite or whatever. You get the scissors and you cut around it, cut the edge, take the plastic off, put it straight on, and then bandage that on. It's quite incredible when there's been a bite like that. The pain goes straight away. Yep, yep. So you can see everything in me tells me not to put it on the white tablecloth. But that's sealed now because it's messy stuff. So this is a mess-free way to make it, and yet so handy if someone needs it. Yeah. Now you can also put that on conjunctivitis. You can put that on a sore eye. That's very gentle on the sore eye. In fact, there's no limit to where you can put it. I've known people to put it on congested chest. I know people to have put it on the stomach for stomach pain. With all of these, there's no wrong thing to do. I just probably wouldn't put a ginger poultice on an eye. And so ends our Natural Remedies seminar. Wow, we're right on time. So any questions before we close? Yes?
The turtle poultice, if you were made to get a shot, like a flu shot,
Yeah.
I think it would fall over.
Okay, and I guess most people realise that the people dying from the COVID vaccine, and what's scary about the COVID vaccine is animal studies haven't been done. And I was reading one paper where every ferret that they tested it on died. But let's say someone has to have, say, a flu shot. So a friend told me she had to have a flu shot to keep her job. And she's in nursing. And I said, well, you could take charcoal by mouth, you could have the charcoal poultice, and as soon as the needle comes out, you apply it. And I'm saying there because she's a nurse, have it in her abdomen, which had a little bit more tissue in it than mine has. So she thought that would take a while to get to the blood. So by the time it's trying to get the blood, she's got the poultice on. She was so sick. So even with all of that, she was very sick. See, it takes 1 minute for one drop of blood to go around your whole body. So I know in Australia, and I think here too, there's a lot of people that are questioning it. In fact, the current figures in Australia are 46% of Australians do not want the shot. Yes?
Are you removing it every time you shower?
Yeah, yes, you do. That was a surprise. A microphone. You do remove it every time you have a shower, yeah. So that's the only time I removed it. Yeah.
How often do you add more castor to it?
You'll get to know. See that? Can you see the glistening of it? That's quite wet. You'll get to know. Sometimes it's daily. It all depends on how much you put on. But you'll feel it quite damp when you first put it on, and in the morning it might feel a little bit damp, but after the next morning it might be drying out, then you'll put a little bit more on. You wouldn't put as much on as I put on initially, but you'll put probably about a teaspoon on every day. Yes?
Do any of these poultices work for eczema?
For eczema, no. Any poultice that you put on eczema heats up and then the eczema gets worse. But we have seen people totally heal from eczema. What they have to do is stop wheat, peanuts, dairy and oats because it's an allergy. So once those are stopped, it can take at least 2 months to see a result. Meanwhile, the best anti-inflammatory for those itches is ice. Ice will kill the itch. You put the ice on until you can't bear the pain, then you take it off. Then you put it back on again. Then you take it off and you put it back on. You keep doing that until you can actually bear it on for quite a while. You see, inflammation feeds that itch. And when you scratch it, you just make more inflammation. So one of the problems with eczema, of course, is the itch, but the scratching that just makes it so much worse. And it's understandable because it's the only thing that removes it. But actually, it makes it worse than ice. Have your ice packs, have ice everywhere. We had a lady last program at Living Springs who has severe allergies. She doesn't know, we don't know, but on the third day she looked like she had Botox. The lips were like this. She said, what do I do? I said, ice. She had other patches in her body. She said, I have had this for years. Ice has brought me more relief than anything. How simple is that? Ice. Just ice. Yes? Yes, we do a lot with aloe vera. One of the best things you can for aloe vera is your burns. But it's like with eczema, you can try coconut oil, you can try aloe vera, and they might help a little, but eczema is coming from internal. So you got to hit it internally. See, if you put cortisone on eczema, it'll go away. Where does it go? It goes deeper into the body, and then eventually it has to come out again, and it's usually worse. Yes?
For the Castor compress, do you make a new one every day or do you reuse the same one?
We use the same one. In fact, one castor oil compress can last a couple of months. Because it's not drawing anything out of your body. This is just a vehicle to hold the oil to go into your body. Yeah?
Can you do oil, should you do oil pulling if you have mercury fillings?
Yes. Yeah. You certainly can. It just helps to draw the waste out. Is the castor oil good for acne? We have to, I'm so glad someone left my wire. One of the main causes of acne is a hormone imbalance. So again, you've got to get it from internally. Yeah. Well, if she scratches, it'll get a lot worse. Yeah. Sugar will feed it, caffeine will feed it, bad food will feed it, dehydration will feed it. You scratch it, it makes it worse. So, caution, because you don't want her to scar her face. But last night I gave a lecture on hormones, and I think you can still catch that. But get her to watch that and see that, because when does acne start? When puberty starts. So it's a hormonal imbalance. So if she applies the Anna's Wild Yam cream to her body and gets the hormones balanced, the acne should go down. Yes?
Oregano, the oil we use in the food bomb, if I don't have any health issues.
Yeah, you call it, oregano. We call it oregano. It's the same thing. You can. That'll really blow the top of your head off. But you can, but you could use it instead of the eucalyptus. It's just one drop. It's incredibly strong. Very strong. Okay?
The charcoal poultice for ticks, well, I got those last night.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Great. We're all done. Got a break tomorrow night. And then when we come back on Thursday night, we're going to look at diabetes and heart disease. So everyone that's got a pancreas should be there, and everyone that's got a heart should be there. So let me close with prayer. Father in heaven, thank you so much for this body, its ability to heal itself. And thank you for the knowledge of these simple treatments that help the body to heal. And I pray these things tonight in Jesus' name. Amen.
There's samples in the back.
Oh, samples.
Where you go?
Oh,
Or you want to book somebody?